Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of stone and sand, a place where time itself seems to pause, the Valley of the Kings. Imagine the desert night, cool air brushing against your face, while the cliffs loom like giants carved by eternity. Pharaohs dreamed of immortality here, and generations of workers carved those dreams into the earth. You're about to wander through tunnels where kings once rested and secrets still whisper. And honestly, if you tried to live here back then, between the scorching heat, the lack of Wi-Fi, and the occasional scorpion, you probably wouldn't make it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you are and what time it is right now. I'd love to know who else is lying in the dark, listening across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand crunches softly beneath your sandals as you step deeper into the valley. It doesn't feel like you're in the present anymore. The moonlight spills over the cliffs, and every shadow looks like it might conceal a doorway. The air is dry, and when you inhale, it almost tastes like dust baked for thousands of years. You run your hand along the stone, rough and cool, and you wonder, how many hands before yours traced this same path? Perhaps a tired worker, or a priest whispering a prayer as he walked to seal away a king forever. You can almost hear it, echoes of picks hitting rock, the creak of wooden sledges dragging stone blocks, the muttered songs of workers trying to keep pace. They carved this valley not for comfort, but for permanence. The pharaohs demanded a tomb that could defy time itself. A tomb wasn't just a resting place. It was a machine for eternity, an address in the afterlife, a cosmic insurance policy. You glance up at the stars, and you remember how they aligned temples and tombs with constellations. For the Egyptians, the sky wasn't just decoration, it was a map. To them, eternity was not some vague dream but a set of coordinates, carefully measured, etched into limestone. You're standing where astronomy and architecture fused into something spiritual. Funny thing is, while modern engineers sketch with software and measure with lasers, these people used ropes, knotted cords, and simple sight lines. Yet the precision is unnerving. Try building a flat-pack bookshelf from IKEA without swearing. It's tough. Now imagine carving a tunnel straight into a cliff that still hasn't collapsed after 3 millennia. That's not luck. That's genius. As you walk, the silence becomes thicker, almost like velvet wrapping around you. It's not just quiet. It's heavy, as if the valley itself is listening. And you realize you're in a place designed for silence. Once sealed, the tombs were never meant to be disturbed. The pharaoh inside would continue his journey with the gods, undisturbed by footsteps or laughter or breath. And yet, here you are. You think about the first explorers who dared to pry open those tombs. Candle flames flickered, the air stale with centuries of sleep. Some found treasures. Others found only empty sarcophagi, stripped long before. And you wonder, as your fingers trace hieroglyphs faintly carved into the wall, how many stories are still locked away? For every tomb found, historians suspect others lie hidden, still waiting. But let's not rush ahead. For now, you're standing at the threshold. A cliff face, unremarkable at first glance. But lean closer. See that seam in the stone? That faint line like a scar? That's the doorway. Workers would have cut an entrance, then sealed it again, plastering over the stone so it vanished into the cliff. You never would have noticed it, not unless you knew. To the untrained eye, it's just more rock. To a king, it was the passage to forever. You picture the day it was built, the sun blazing overhead, sweat dripping down the backs of men hauling chisels. Orders shouted, dust rising. Each strike of the hammer echoed like a heartbeat, and with every heartbeat, the tomb took shape. They weren't just digging, They were weaving immortality into stone. And here's a secret. Many workers carved tiny graffiti inside. You'd think it would all be solemn prayers and strict hieroglyphs. But no, sometimes it was a note like, Panab was here, or complaints about food. Even in eternity, people wanted to be remembered. Humans haven't changed much. You've left your name carved into a desk or scribbled on a bathroom wall. Haven't you? Well, they did the same, only theirs lasted longer. The passage narrows. You duck slightly, brushing your shoulder against the wall. The light catches paint, still vivid blues and reds. Can you imagine? This was once brighter than neon signs in Times Square. Gods with falcon heads, scarab beetles glowing like jewels, stars spangled across ceilings. The pigments came from crushed minerals painstakingly ground, mixed with egg or resin. They weren't just painting, they were bottling eternity in color. And the colors stayed. That's the magic. When the world above shifted, eroded, crumbled, these walls kept their glow. You pause, close your eyes. Imagine the tomb freshly sealed. No dust, no decay, just silence, incense smoke, flickering torches, and the steady chant of priests sending their king into forever. That sound still lingers, doesn't it? You almost hear it vibrating in your bones. And you laugh softly because, let's be honest, if you were actually here alone, you'd be terrified. Every shadow would look like it's watching. Every draft would feel like a whisper on your neck. But here, in this story, you're safe. Safe enough to let your mind wander through mysteries carved in stone. Do you feel the cool air brushing your face? It's not just air. It's history breathing. You're walking not only into the ground, but into time itself. Each step takes you further away from your own century and deeper into theirs. You can almost sense pharaohs watching from somewhere unseen, judging, curious. And maybe, just maybe, they're smiling. After all, what's immortality worth if no one remembers your name? So you keep walking, one step, then another. The path slopes downward, and with every meter, the world outside feels farther away. You are now inside the valley's beating heart, and it is waiting to tell you secrets that, for thousands of years, it kept to itself. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of stone and sand, a place where time itself seems to pause, the Valley of the Kings. Imagine the desert night, cool air brushing against your face, while the cliffs loom like giants carved by eternity. Pharaohs dreamed of immortality here, and generations of workers carved those dreams into the earth. You're about to wander through tunnels where kings once rested and secrets still whisper. And honestly, if you tried to live here back then, between the scorching heat, the lack of Wi-Fi, and the occasional scorpion, yeah, you probably wouldn't make it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you are and what time it is right now. I'd love to know who else is lying in the dark, listening across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand crunches softly beneath your sandals as you step deeper into the valley. It doesn't feel like you're in the present anymore. The moonlight spills over the cliffs, and every shadow looks like it might conceal a doorway. The air is dry, and when you inhale, it almost tastes like dust baked for thousands of years. You run your hand along the stone, rough and cool, and you wonder, how many hands before yours traced this same path? Perhaps a tired worker, or a priest whispering a prayer as he walked to seal away a king forever. You can almost hear it, echoes of picks hitting rock, the creak of wooden sledges dragging stone blocks, the muttered songs of workers trying to keep pace. They carved this valley not for comfort, but for permanence. The pharaohs demanded a tomb that could defy time itself. A tomb wasn't just a resting place. It was a machine for eternity, an address in the afterlife, a cosmic insurance policy. You glance up at the stars, and you remember how they align temples and tombs with constellations. For the Egyptians, the sky wasn't just decoration, it was a map. To them, eternity was not some vague dream but a set of coordinates, carefully measured, etched into limestone. You're standing where astronomy and architecture fused into something spiritual. Funny thing is, while modern engineers sketch with software and measure with lasers, these people used ropes, knotted cords, and simple sight lines. Yet the precision is unnerving. Try building a flat-pack bookshelf from IKEA without swearing. It's tough. Now imagine carving a tunnel straight into a cliff that still hasn't collapsed after 3 millennia. That's not luck. That's genius. As you walk, the silence becomes thicker, almost like velvet wrapping around you. It's not just quiet. It's heavy, as if the valley itself is listening, and you realize you're in a place designed for silence. Once sealed, the tombs were never meant to be disturbed. The pharaoh inside would continue his journey with the gods, undisturbed by footsteps or laughter or breath. And yet, here you are. You think about the first explorers who dared to pry open those tombs. Candle flames flickered, the air stale with centuries of sleep. Some found treasures. Others found only empty sarcophagi, stripped long before. And you wonder, as your fingers trace hieroglyphs faintly carved into the wall, how many stories are still locked away? For every tomb found, historians suspect others lie hidden, still waiting. But let's not rush ahead. For now, you're standing at the threshold. A cliff face, unremarkable at first glance. But lean closer. See that seam in the stone? That faint line like a scar? That's the doorway. Workers would have cut an entrance, then sealed it again, plastering over the stone so it vanished into the cliff. You never would have noticed it, not unless you knew. To the untrained eye, it's just more rock. To a king, it was the passage to forever. You picture the day it was built, the sun blazing overhead, sweat dripping down the backs of men hauling chisels. Orders shouted, dust rising. Each strike of the hammer echoed like a heartbeat, and with every heartbeat, the tomb took shape. They weren't just digging, they were weaving immortality into stone. And here's a secret. Many workers carved tiny graffiti inside. You'd think it would all be solemn prayers and strict hieroglyphs. But no, sometimes it was a note like, Panab was here, or complaints about food. Even in eternity, people wanted to be remembered. Humans haven't changed much. You've left your name carved into a desk or scribbled on a bathroom wall, haven't you? Well, they did the same, only theirs lasted longer. The passage narrows. You duck slightly, brushing your shoulder against the wall. The light catches paint, still vivid blues and reds. Can you imagine? This was once brighter than neon signs in Times Square. Gods with falcon heads, scarab beetles glowing like jewels, stars spangled across ceilings. The pigments came from crushed minerals, painstakingly ground, mixed with egg or resin. They weren't just painting, they were bottling eternity in color. And the colors stayed. That's the magic. When the world above shifted, eroded, crumbled, these walls kept their glow. You pause, close your eyes. Imagine the tomb freshly sealed. No dust, no decay, just silence, incense smoke, flickering torches, and the steady chant of priests sending their king into forever. That sound still lingers, doesn't it? You almost hear it vibrating in your bones. And you laugh softly because, let's be honest, if you were actually here alone, you'd be terrified. Every shadow would look like it's watching. Every draft would feel like a whisper on your neck. But here, in this story, you're safe. Safe enough to let your mind wander through mysteries carved in stone. Do you feel the cool air brushing your face? It's not just air. It's history breathing. You're walking not only into the ground, but into time itself. Each step takes you further away from your own century and deeper into theirs. You can almost sense pharaohs watching from somewhere unseen, judging, curious. And maybe, just maybe, they're smiling. After all, what's immortality worth if no one remembers your name? So you keep walking, one step, then another. The path slopes downward, and with every meter, the world outside feels farther away. You are now inside the valley's beating heart, and it is waiting to tell you secrets that, for thousands of years, it kept to itself. The polished chamber seems to glow faintly in the torchlight, as though the stone itself remembers every flicker that's ever passed over it. You take a slow step forward, then another, your shadow stretching long across the floor. Somewhere above, the desert night is silent, but down here, you feel as if you've entered a different clock. Time ticks slower, thicker, almost syrupy. And here's the strange thing, you begin to notice patterns. The walls aren't just smooth for beauty's sake. They're measured, aligned, their angles precise. It's as though every corner, every joint was calculated with mathematics woven into the stone. The Egyptians had a way of folding numbers into mystery. Imagine this. They didn't simply carve a hallway long enough to fit a procession. They carved it at lengths that matched celestial cycles, the rhythm of stars. Every cubit, every span, echoed a divine equation. The afterlife wasn't vague poetry to them, it was geometry. You walk slowly, dragging your fingertips along the wall, and you feel shallow grooves, marks that were once guidelines. They look like scratches to the untrained eye, but to a surveyor 3,000 years ago, these were coordinates. A living blueprint. And the more you notice, the more you realize how intentional it all is. The slope of the floor? Not random. It mirrors the descent of the sun into the horizon. The width of the chamber? Matched to proportions that turn up again in temples, in obelisks, even in the human body. They believed the universe had order, and by copying that order in stone, they invited eternity to dwell here. It's oddly comforting, really. Today, your calendar pings and your phone nags you about appointments. Back then, the reminder was written in stone, pointing always toward the stars. You glance at the ceiling, flat and broad with faint traces of pigment. Once, this ceiling may have been painted as a star map so that Pharaoh could look up, even in death, and see the heavens above him. Imagine lying in eternal sleep, surrounded not by blackness, but by a painted sky where the gods themselves kept you company. You chuckle softly, beats staring at the popcorn ceiling in your apartment. But then, a thought tickles at you. Why go to such trouble? Why not just carve a simple cave, tuck the king inside, and call it a day? The answer lies in their philosophy. Precision itself was a spell. If everything matched the divine ratios, if every angle echoed the universe, then the tomb wasn't just safe storage, it was a vessel for transformation. You take a slow breath, and the air feels cooler now. Maybe that's your imagination, or maybe it's the stone exhaling secrets it's held too long. Either way, you feel something settling over you. A quiet reverence, heavy but not oppressive. And then, a surprising discovery. Etched on one corner of the wall is a faint grid, like a checkerboard. Archaeologists believe these were drafts, practice sketches before the final art was added. Imagine the painter, kneeling here, carefully mapping where each god would stand. Each symbol would glow. It wasn't chaos. It was careful rehearsal. Eternity rehearsed before being painted. You trace the lines with your finger and think. Somewhere, a man with paint-stained hands once crouched in the same spot. Maybe he cursed quietly when the grid went crooked. Maybe he smiled when the lines aligned perfectly. It's such a human image, perfection built out of tiny, fallible gestures. And now, here's something most people don't realize. Many of these measurements were meant to confuse as well as impress. Pharaohs weren't just planning for eternity, they were planning against thieves. The tunnels were sometimes angled oddly, leading intruders away from the burial chamber. False passages were carved, precise and believable, just to waste a thief's time. It was geometry as a weapon. You grin at the thought. Imagine being a tomb raider, torch in hand, thinking you've cracked the code, only to spend hours wandering into a dead end. Somewhere in the afterlife, a pharaoh is sipping cosmic tea, chuckling. And yet, the deception didn't always work. Tomb robbers could be as clever as architects. But in these early chambers, you see the first hints of that eternal chess game. Kings against thieves, stone against greed, numbers against chaos. You step deeper into a hallway where the slope steepens. You place your palm on the floor, and it's smoother than the walls, almost slippery from centuries of touch. You have to lean forward slightly, like you're bowing without meaning to. Maybe that was intentional too, a subtle way of forcing anyone entering to bend before the pharaoh. Smart, right? Even geometry could kneel you. The torchlight flickers, and shadows leap across carvings. Hieroglyphs etched in neat lines, each symbol like a frozen whisper. You don't have to read them to feel the weight. This wasn't casual graffiti. This was scripture, a cosmic diary. Some inscriptions gave instructions to the dead king, where to walk, which gods to greet, which words to speak to cross into the next world. Others cursed those who dared to intrude. And still others? They were numbers, measurements disguised as prayer. You can't help but smile. Somewhere in those squiggles might be the equivalent of insert sarcophagus here. Holy IKEA instructions. And here's where the story deepens. Each chamber wasn't just functional. It was symbolic. The passage mirrored the sun's journey. The burial chamber echoed the womb of the goddess Nut. The sarcophagus represented the horizon, the threshold between day and night. Geometry wasn't only math, it was myth carved into stone. You breathe again, slower now. Each inhale feels heavy, like you're inhaling dust from centuries past. Each exhale drifts out as a sigh that joins the chorus of sighs trapped in these walls. And then, in the corner, you notice a rough patch, a mistake, or maybe not. Archaeologists found that sometimes builders left sockets or niches where statues once stood. Perhaps this rough patch once held a guardian figure, a silent sentinel who watched over the chamber. You imagine stone eyes following you as you walk, measuring your worth. It's strangely comforting, though. You're not being judged harshly, just observed, noted, added to the long roll of people who've stepped here. Pharaoh isn't angry, you're just another traveler, passing through. And as you keep moving, you can't help but chuckle. You think about modern security systems, laser grids, alarms, motion sensors. Then you compare them to this: angled passages, hidden doors, mathematical mazes. Low-tech, yes, but also brilliant. And here's the kicker. Some of these designs still haven't been fully understood. The math behind their alignments still makes scholars scratch their heads. That's the magic. You're standing inside an ancient equation, written not on paper but on cliffs. The hallway ends in another chamber, larger this time. Your torch barely touches the far wall. The silence deepens, but not empty, more like a hum under your skin. This is where you realize you're no longer just following a path. You're inside a spell written in angles, carved with chisels, painted with starlight. And as you step forward, you wonder, if you were Pharaoh, would this geometry be enough? Would you trust these numbers to carry you beyond death? Or would you, like every human, still feel that tiny flicker of fear at the unknown? Either way, the walls are patient. They don't rush. They've waited thousands of years. They'll wait longer. And tonight, they're letting you borrow their silence for just a little while. You linger in the wide chamber, torchlight dancing across walls that seem almost too perfect to have been carved by human hands. But they were. Not by magic, not by gods striking stone with lightning bolts, but by ordinary people, flesh and bone, sweat and calluses. And this is where your thoughts drift now, to the builders themselves. You picture them clearly. Men with shaved heads to keep lice away, bare chests gleaming with sweat, sandals made of reeds, already worn thin from long days walking back and forth. They weren't nameless shadows. They were individuals with jokes, complaints, and dreams just like you. And here's the thing, they weren't always slaves. That's a common misconception. Many were skilled laborers, recruited from nearby villages, paid with food, beer, and lodging. A team might spend years working on a single tomb, their families living in small clusters of mud brick houses nearby. The most famous settlement was Deir el-Medina, a village of tomb builders and artisans, hidden just over the ridge. Imagine a cul-de-sac of history, filled with gossip about chisels, paintbrushes, and the pharaoh's latest demands. You hear it in your mind, the morning bustle of that village. Women grinding grain, children chasing goats, men sharpening chisels. The smell of baking bread mixes with the sharper scent of limestone dust carried on the wind. It's not glamorous, but it's real. Life here was both ordinary and extraordinary. As you wander deeper in the tomb, you imagine one worker wiping his brow, muttering under his breath about how the overseer never gives enough breaks. Another hums a tune to keep rhythm, his voice low but steady. Their chisels strike in sync, like percussion instruments in a dusty orchestra. Tap, tap, tap. 1,000 echoes building eternity note by note. And there were artists too, men who held brushes instead of chisels. They mixed pigments from crushed minerals. Malachite for green, lapis lazuli for deep blues, ochre for reds and yellows. These weren't quick doodles. They were divine illustrations, carefully planned and executed with precision that rivals any modern mural. Each figure had to follow sacred proportions, the canon of Egyptian art, where gods and kings stood larger than ordinary people, and every hand, every eye, followed rules set centuries before. You smile at the thought of an apprentice nervously tracing his first lines, the master correcting him with a sigh. No, the falcon's beak curves sharper. Do it again. Some things never change. Mentors everywhere have the same tone. And not all workers were saints. There are records of theft, disputes, even strikes. Yes, strikes. At Deir el-Medina, when rations of bread and beer were late, workers downed their tools and protested. Imagine Pharaoh's eternal mansion delayed because someone didn't deliver the grocery list. It's both hilarious and deeply human. You take a deep breath. The chamber air smells faintly of minerals, like damp chalk. You close your eyes and, for a moment, you're there among them. The scrape of brushes, the clang of chisels, the coughs, the murmurs of conversation in a language now long silent. You almost expect to open your eyes and see them standing around you, though let's be honest, if that actually happened, you'd sprint straight out of here. But here's a secret most people don't know. Some workers left personal messages inside the tombs, scribbled graffiti, hidden doodles, even love notes. One inscription translates to something like, Nibra loves his wife Satsebek, always. Imagine that. Amid all the gods and kings, someone slipped in a quiet, I love you. And somehow, across millennia, it's still here. Proof that eternity isn't just for pharaohs. The workers also buried their own dead nearby. Tombs for artisans have been found, smaller but lovingly decorated. Their belief in the afterlife wasn't limited to kings. It was woven into everyone's existence. You realize this wasn't just a job. It was faith chiseling itself into stone. You move toward a wall where faint red lines remain, guidelines for the artists. They drew rough sketches in ochre before painting in brighter colors. If you look closely, you can see corrections, adjustments, even abandoned figures. It's like peeking behind the curtain at a stage play, seeing the pencil marks before the final performance. And then humor finds its way in. Archaeologists once found a sketch of a donkey playing a harp, basically an ancient meme. Workers had a sense of humor, and they weren't afraid to sneak it into eternity. You laugh softly, imagining a tired artisan doodling in the corner, centuries before internet jokes existed. Maybe humor really is immortal. You step back, take in the scale of it all. The workers lived harsh lives, yes, but they also lived meaningful ones. Their fingerprints are in the brushstrokes, their breath in the dust, their laughter in the graffiti. And as you stand here, you feel less like a visitor in Pharaoh's tomb and more like a guest in theirs. You think about how fragile it all could have been. One slip of a chisel, one collapse of rock, and years of work could vanish. Yet they persevered, trusting that each strike brought them closer to forever. And here's where you pause, leaning on your torch. You realize something. The pharaoh's immortality wasn't only carved by gods or magic. It was carved by calloused hands, aching backs, and tired eyes that never got the credit. The kings may have ordered the tombs, but it was the workers who gave them eternity. You breathe deeply, and for a moment you feel gratitude. Gratitude for the anonymous artisans who left behind beauty they never got to claim. Gratitude that you can stand here now, hearing their whispers through stone. The chamber seems warmer now, filled not with silence but with voices. Voices of men and women long gone, still alive in pigment, in chisel marks, in laughter scratched into limestone. And you realize you're not alone. You're part of their story now, another witness carrying it forward. You smile softly, your torch flickering. The path ahead slopes downward again, and the shadows beckon. The workers are behind you, their songs fading, their tools resting. Ahead, something new waits. The pharaoh's architects had more in store than just corridors and paintings. The tomb will reveal deeper secrets. And with one last glance at the walls glowing with ancient art, you step into the narrowing tunnel. The floor dips, and the air cools again. You feel as though you're leaving the world of men and entering something far stranger. The workers are gone. Now, you walk into the realm of the pharaoh himself. You notice it almost immediately, the colors. At first, it's just a faint shimmer on stone. But the further you move, the more it blossoms into a gallery of hues that should have faded long ago. Blues so deep they look like night sky. Reds still warm as embers. Yellows glowing like desert dawn. The walls are alive with paint, and you stop in your tracks, stunned. Think about this. 3,000 years ago, artists crushed minerals into dust, ground them by hand, and mixed them with binders like egg whites, resin, or even honey. They didn't have paint tubes, didn't stroll into an art supply store. Everything came from the earth. Lapis lazuli for blue, mined and traded from distant lands. Hematite for red, malachite for green. When they smeared it on stone, they weren't decorating. They were distilling eternity into color. You lean closer. A falcon-headed god stares back, eyes sharp, feathers outlined in black. His beak gleams as though it was painted yesterday. And beside him, a scarab beetle, its shell shimmering with turquoise. The lines are precise, the proportions strict. This wasn't freehand whimsy. It followed rules, sacred canons passed down through generations. Every figure had to be measured, each limb aligned to cosmic order. It's a little funny when you think about it. Today, an art teacher scolds you for drawing outside the lines. Back then, the gods themselves demanded your ruler be steady. The ceiling catches your eye next. Stars scatter across a background of deep blue, a night sky trapped underground. You tilt your head back, and for a moment you forget you're buried beneath rock. Feels like lying in a field, gazing upward. The illusion is almost tender, the idea that even in death, Pharaoh would never be cut off from the heavens. He'd simply lie here, cocooned in paint, with the universe always above him. You take a slow breath. The air smells faintly like dust and something older, almost metallic. But behind the scent, your imagination supplies something else. The tang of wet pigment, the smoke of oil lamps, the murmurs of painters working in silence. You can almost hear their brushes scratching against the wall, their whispers carrying spells with each stroke. And not every painting was solemn. Look closely and you might find a worker's handprint, pressed into plaster before it dried. A quiet signature. I was here, not on a selfie, not in a digital file, but in stone and color that survived millennia. Somehow that small human trace feels just as powerful as the gods looming above. You tilt your torch, letting the light sweep over a row of hieroglyphs. The colors glow, each symbol carefully filled in. These weren't random scribbles. They were spells, instructions, cosmic travel guides. If the king forgot which god to greet, which gate to pass, the walls reminded him. Imagine having your afterlife cheat sheet painted floor to ceiling. No need for Google Maps, your walls were the GPS of eternity. And here's something most people don't know. The colors weren't just pretty. They had meaning. Red for power and life, green for rebirth, blue for the heavens, gold for the divine. Each brushstroke was a coded prayer. To the modern eye it looks decorative, but to the Egyptians it was language, the language of survival beyond death. You chuckle softly. Imagine repainting your bedroom walls, but instead of just choosing eggshell white or seafoam green, you're thinking, will this shade of ochre guarantee eternal bliss? Talk about pressure. But the pressure worked. These colors lasted when almost everything else crumbled. Wood rotted, linen decayed, but pigment clung stubbornly to stone. It feels almost unfair. Your own wall paint starts peeling after a few years, and here's a mural still glowing after 30 centuries. You want to ask the secret recipe, but maybe eternity doesn't share its trade secrets. The figures on the wall seem to watch you as you walk. Tall gods stride beside Pharaoh, offering thanks and blessings. Boats sail across painted water, carrying the king on his journey through night and dawn. The more you stare, the more the walls pulse with life, as if they're not just images but windows. Windows into a story still unfolding. And you realize this is storytelling on a cosmic scale. The walls weren't meant to be admired by tourists. They were meant to guide, to reassure, to promise. They were bedtime stories for a king sleeping forever. And now, somehow, they've become your bedtime story too. You pause at a panel where Pharaoh himself is depicted. He's tall, regal, painted larger than the gods around him. That wasn't arrogance, it was tradition. Size meant importance. The bigger the figure, the bigger the presence in eternity. You smile at the thought. If modern Instagram influencers had been around back then, their tomb walls would be enormous. But behind the grandeur, there's fragility. If you lean too close, you can see cracks where plaster has flaked, where color has dulled. The miracle is not that every pigment survived. It's that any of it did. You feel protective, almost tender. These walls are survivors, carrying whispers from people who thought they'd be forgotten. You step back, let the colors wash over you. It's strangely soothing. You think about how many generations these walls have outlasted. Empires rising and falling, languages dying, wars raging. Yet here they stand, still glowing. It makes your own worries feel small. Deadlines, emails, broken phones. They all fade in the glow of colors meant for eternity. You breathe slower, softer. The torch crackles. The shadows stretch. And the walls keep glowing, patient as stars. And then you laugh gently to yourself. Because in a way, pharaohs were the ultimate interior designers. They didn't just pick out curtains and rugs. They picked entire cosmic palettes to match their afterlife vibes. Somewhere out there, HGTV would be proud. Still, jokes aside, the effect is profound. You're not just in a tomb, you're in a gallery of eternity, painted by hands that believed beauty itself was sacred. The tunnel ahead dips again, drawing you deeper. You glance one last time at the murals, at the falcons, the scarabs, the painted skies. They seem to nod, as if giving permission. And with that, you step forward, colors fading behind you, darkness ahead. You carry their glow inside you now like embers, and the tomb waits, ready to reveal its next secret. The air changes again as you move forward. It's cooler now, tighter. Your torch throws a long, trembling cone of light across the narrowing passage. The paintings fade, the colors left behind, and what remains is raw stone. Walls that feel more secretive, more watchful. And that's when you notice it. The floor isn't smooth anymore. You crouch, brushing your fingers along the stone. There's a slight dip, almost like a shallow groove carved intentionally. At first, you think it's just wear from centuries of shifting sand. But then the realization creeps in, it's a trip line. A place where one misstep could trigger something nasty. You straighten slowly. Congratulations, you've officially entered the Pharaohs' booby-trapped playground. Here's the truth. Tombs weren't just built to house bodies and treasures. They were designed as fortresses against thieves. Imagine pouring decades of wealth, artistry, and prayers into a single chamber, only to have some opportunist with a crowbar stroll in and snatch it. No, Pharaoh wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. So, builders created deterrents, clever ones. Some were psychological, like curses etched in hieroglyphs. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the Pharaoh's rest. Effective because, let's face it, even today you'd hesitate if you saw that glowing in torchlight. But others? Oh, they were mechanical, physical, ingenious. False doors carved into walls. Corridors that led to nowhere. Shafts filled with rubble, designed to collapse on intruders. Sliding stone blocks that sealed passages tighter than a bank vault. You shuffle forward carefully, imagining what it must have been like for ancient thieves. Creeping in with flickering lamps, sweating under the weight of silence, every footstep echoing. One wrong move and thud. A slab of limestone drops, and you're flatter than yesterday's bread. Not exactly the kind of eternal rest you signed up for. You hold the torch higher. The shadows stretch, revealing what looks like a dead end. A flat wall. But you've learned enough by now to know it's probably not what it seems. Builders loved optical tricks. To the untrained eye, a wall was just a wall. But look closely. There might be a seam, a faint line where stone meets stone. A false door waiting to trick the greedy. And oh, the tricks went beyond stone. Some tombs were smeared with dangerous powders, poisonous dust meant to choke intruders. Others had hidden pits, camouflaged by wooden planks that would crumble under weight. Imagine stepping confidently into a room and suddenly realizing the floor has vanished. Surprise. Eternal abyss. Of course, not every trap was lethal. Some were just exhausting, corridors stuffed with rubble, forcing anyone foolish enough to dig through to waste days, maybe weeks, while guards above noticed. Pharaoh's builders had a sense of humor, in their own grim way. You pause in the passage, the silence pressing close. The thought crosses your mind. What if the trap still works? What if, 3,000 years later, you're about to be flattened like an unlucky pancake? You chuckle nervously. Sure, that would make for a dramatic ending to tonight's story, but not exactly relaxing bedtime material. Your laugh echoes down the tunnel, bouncing off stone. Feels good to laugh here, in a place built to terrify. You realize something. The very existence of these traps proves just how human fear was, even back then. Kings feared being forgotten, feared losing their treasures, feared thieves more than curses. So, they turned their paranoia into architecture. And here's a detail most people don't know. Sometimes the workers themselves were tricked. After completing the tomb, they'd be sealed inside temporary passages, their escape routes closed off so no one could leak the secrets. Imagine spending years carving and painting, only to realize you'll never see daylight again. Historians debate this, of course. Some argue workers were allowed to leave, others that the secrecy demanded final sacrifices. The truth? Still uncertain. You shiver slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of all those unanswered questions. The tomb keeps its secrets well. Your torchlight dances across another section of wall, and you notice graffiti, yes, even here. A quick sketch of a man with exaggerated ears, like some ancient caricature. Was it a worker poking fun at his overseer? Or maybe a thief marking the spot where he almost fell for a trap? The humor lightens the mood, like a wink through history. You whisper to yourself, "Nice try, Pharaoh, but I see your tricks." The walls don't answer, but the silence feels amused, as if the tomb enjoys your small rebellion. You take another step, careful, deliberate. Your sandals scrape the floor softly. You imagine how thieves must have done the same, holding their breath, praying for luck. Some succeeded, many didn't. That's why so many tombs were found looted, their treasures gone, but their traps still intact. Pharaohs planned for eternity, but human greed was just as eternal. And you, right now, are caught between those two forces, standing in the very space where fear and hope collided. You stop, place your hand on the wall. The stone is cool, unyielding. You close your eyes and picture the masons sliding blocks into place, sealing corridors, hiding passageways. Their chisels clink, their torches sputter. Maybe one of them smirked, thinking, "Good luck, robbers." And centuries later, here you are, proving them right. You're cautious, hesitant, respecting their cleverness. The deeper you go, the more you feel it. A sense of being tested, as if Pharaoh himself is whispering, "Do you deserve to walk my halls?" You breathe slowly, softly, torchlight steady. The corridor narrows once more, the ceiling lowering. You duck, your back brushing stone. And ahead, the passage bends sharply to the right. A blind corner, perfect place for a trap. You hesitate, then grin. "All right, Pharaoh, let's see what else you've got." And with that, you turn the corner. The darkness deepens, waiting. The corner swallows you whole. For a moment, the world is nothing but torchlight and your own breath. The passage tightens, the walls pressing close, like the tomb itself is testing how far you're willing to go. And then you notice something odd. The air feels different here, lighter, almost breezy, though you're buried under tons of stone. You stop, tilt your head, and there it is, a faint draft brushing against your cheek. A draft means space, space that isn't visible yet. And space in a tomb almost always means secrets. You lower the torch, scanning carefully. The wall to your left looks like solid limestone, smooth, polished, but your eyes catch a line, so faint you could miss it in the shadows. A seam. You lean closer, tap the stone with your knuckle. The sound is dull, but then shift a little lower, tap again, hollow. The hairs on your arm rise. You found it, a hidden chamber. Architects of the valley were masters of illusion. They built decoys, false doors, entire corridors leading nowhere, all to hide what truly mattered. Sometimes the real burial chamber was tucked behind walls like this, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. You imagine the architects arguing centuries ago. One saying, "Let's just build a single hallway." Another replying, "No, no, thieves will sniff that out in a day. We need 3 fake doors, 2 rubble chutes, and a corridor that goes in circles." Pharaoh listening, nodding wisely, while probably thinking, "Yes, excellent, but make it symmetrical." Kings love symmetry. You chuckle softly at the thought. Even in eternity, the royal obsession with neatness still wins. You run your palm across the seam again, wondering how workers sealed it. Often, they plastered the joints smooth, then painted over them to disguise the trick. Some walls were so perfect that even modern archaeologists with lasers and scanners still struggle to spot the difference. Imagine hiding your bedroom closet so well that 3,000 years later, nobody's found it yet. The draft grows stronger as you step closer. You swear you can hear it, like a faint sigh from the other side, a whisper of air, as if the chamber itself wants to be discovered. And you think of the most famous modern example, Tutankhamun's tomb. Even there, some scholars believe hidden rooms remain undiscovered, walled off so neatly they look like ordinary plaster. Some argue they might contain Queen Nefertiti herself. Others say it's wishful thinking. As always, historians still debate. You imagine what it would feel like to be the first person in centuries to step into a sealed chamber. The air would be heavy, untouched like bottled time. The smell of resins, of linen, of ancient wood trapped in darkness. The silence so complete it would feel alive. And yet you hesitate, because hidden chambers were not only for secrets, but also for traps. A false wall could lead straight into a pit, or unleash rubble that had been waiting patiently for centuries. You picture yourself covered in dust, thinking, well, this is definitely not in the travel brochure. Still, curiosity tugs harder than fear. You follow the seam with your torch, tracing its outline. Curves slightly, forming the shape of a doorway. Whoever sealed it here was clever, but not clever enough to outweed eternity. You step back, squint at the wall, and for a fleeting moment you almost see it. The memory of workers placing the final block, smoothing plaster, painting over it with steady hands. They whisper to each other, knowing this wall hides more than anyone outside should ever know. And then, silence. The tomb claimed their secret just as it was meant to. You wonder how many chambers remain hidden in this valley. Dozens? Hundreds? Pharaohs loved surprises. They wanted their afterlife secured in layers of mystery. Some tombs may never reveal all their secrets because the walls are too perfect, the disguise is too deep. The valley still holds whispers no one has yet coaxed free. You take a step back, letting the torchlight sweep across the wall one last time. The seam glimmers faintly, then vanishes in shadow. It almost feels like the chamber is telling you, not yet, come back another night. So you move on. The corridor curves again, widening slightly. Your footsteps echo. The silence is thick but not empty. It's charged, like static before a storm. You can't shake the feeling that you've walked past 100 more secrets, each sealed tight, each laughing softly at your curiosity. You think of modern explorers with ground-penetrating radar, scanning for voids behind stone. Technology peeling away layers of mystery pharaohs thought would last forever. Part of you feels awe. Another part feels mischievous satisfaction. Take that, Ramesses, you didn't plan for infrared. But then you remember the charm of not knowing. That maybe some secrets are sweeter when left sealed. After all, it's the mystery that draws you here in the first place. You smile, torch trembling slightly as you breathe. The corridor ahead glows faintly with your light, and though you don't see the hidden chambers anymore, you feel them. Behind stone, behind plaster, behind silence. They're still there, waiting. You keep walking, and with every step, the tomb seems to lean closer, whispering. Some doors aren't meant to open. Not yet. You notice them before you realize what they mean. At first, they're just marks on stone, neat lines cut into plaster. But the longer you stare, the more they seem to bristle, almost hiss. Hieroglyphs, hundreds of them, march across the walls, each carved with a precision that feels sharper in the torchlight. And then you catch the phrases, Not about gods or rituals this time, but warnings. Sentences that curl like smoke, each one pressing closer to your chest. The famous ones are easy to recall. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the Pharaoh's rest. You whisper it aloud, the words echoing into the passage. Your voice sounds strange, like it doesn't belong to you. The silence that follows is heavier than before, like the tomb is waiting to see if you really believe it. Curses, that's what the ancients called them, or maybe what later generations labeled them. In truth, they were more like psychological traps. Imagine you're a tomb robber, lamp sputtering, heart racing. You turn a corner and see those words blazing at you. Do you press forward, or do you retreat? Suddenly aware of your own fragile lungs, your brittle bones? You grin faintly. If you were that robber, you'd probably claim bravery but actually sprint home faster than a Wi-Fi disconnect. But here's the eerie part. Sometimes the curses seem to work. A digger would enter a tomb and soon fall ill or even die. Historians argue whether it was truly mystical or just practical. Ancient builders may have smeared toxins into paint, sealed pathogens into airless chambers. Imagine breathing in spores that had been waiting 3,000 years for fresh lungs to arrive. Creepy science masquerading as magic. You step carefully, the torch throwing hieroglyph shadows across your skin. They crawl over your arms like tattoos, whispering. Some of the warnings are vivid. Promises of crocodiles, snakes, or scorpions devouring intruders. Others invoke gods by name, calling on Anubis or Sekhmet to strike down the unworthy. It's equal parts poetry and threat, like the world's most intimidating keep-out sign. And of course, you can't help but think about the most famous curse story of all, Tutankhamun's tomb. When Howard Carter's team opened it in 1922, newspapers went wild with tales of a curse. Several people connected to the discovery died mysteriously. Blood infections, pneumonia, accidents. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the pharaoh was playing the long game. You chuckle softly. Imagine the pharaoh smirking in the afterlife, saying, "Took you long enough, but I still got you." Still, the debate rages even now. Some say it was all sensational journalism, others point to science, mold spores, ancient toxins. As always, historians still argue. The torchlight flutters, making the hieroglyphs seem to shift, like the gods themselves are flexing in the stone. You reach out, fingers brushing the carvings. They're cool, almost damp. You feel the grooves, the ridges, the careful artistry. Each symbol is a spell, carved not just with tools but with intention. You lean close to one in particular, a snake coiled and ready. Its tongue flicks out in red paint, though faded. The detail makes your chest tighten. It's so lifelike, you half expect it to slide off the wall and slither into the corridor. You whisper, "Not tonight, buddy," and move along, shaking your head. You can't ignore the atmosphere here. It's heavier than before, charged with something between awe and unease. The workers who carved these curses weren't joking. They believed in them, and maybe belief itself has a kind of power. Words repeated often enough, carved deep enough, can shape reality in ways we still don't understand. You stop again, holding the torch lower. At your feet, another warning sprawls across the floor. Unusual, since most hieroglyphs were kept to walls or ceilings. This one demands to be stepped over, a psychological dare. You hesitate, then laugh quietly. "Nice try. I see your mind games." Still, you step across quickly, like the stone might suddenly open its jaws. You feel silly but also cautious, because really, what's the harm in being careful when eternity is involved? The corridor winds deeper, the curses multiplying. Every surface seems alive with them, jagged lines of threats, promises of doom. And yet, you also notice the artistry. Even curses were beautiful here, each glyph elegant, balanced, glowing in the light. It's like walking through a gallery of nightmares painted with love. You take a slow breath, and for a fleeting moment, you think about your own life, about how words, your words, anyone's words, can linger. These curses have lasted millennia. What phrases of yours, spoken in laughter or anger, will echo centuries from now? The thought is both sobering and strangely comforting. Your torch crackles. The flame dips low, then steadies again. You whisper to the tomb itself, half joking, half sincere, "Don't worry, Pharaoh. I'm just visiting. No treasure hunting tonight." The silence seems to relax, almost as if the walls accept your promise. And as you walk on, the hieroglyphs thin out. The curses fade, replaced once more by plain stone. You feel lighter, though part of you wonders if the warnings are truly gone, or if they've simply followed you, etched now in the shadows at your back. Either way, you keep moving. The tomb has more to show, and you're not done yet. The corridor narrows again, pressing you forward like a hand guiding you into destiny. Your torchlight flickers across plain stone. The curse is now behind you, their echoes fading. And then you see it. The passage opens suddenly into a vast chamber. The air is heavier here, thick with silence so deep it feels almost physical. You take a step inside, and the torch flame reveals the centerpiece of everything. A massive stone sarcophagus. Your breath catches. It sits on a raised platform, carved from a single block of stone so immense you wonder how on earth anyone got it down here. Smooth, angular, its lid sealed tight, the sarcophagus radiates weight. Not just physical, but spiritual, like the entire tomb has been holding its breath around it for centuries. You circle slowly, your sandals scuffing against the floor. The lid is etched with hieroglyphs, delicate as lace, each symbol a prayer, a spell, a command. Anubis stands watch in sleek black lines, his jackal head stern. Isis spreads her wings across the surface, wrapping the pharaoh in divine embrace. The carvings shimmer faintly in the firelight, alive in a way that stone shouldn't be. You step closer, leaning down to run your fingers across the grooves. The stone is cool, impossibly smooth, and for the first time tonight you feel a strange tug, a mix of reverence and mischief. Half of you wants to bow. The other half wants to tap the lid and whisper, "Knock, knock. Anybody home?" You resist, though the joke lingers in your mind. Instead, you focus on the history. Pharaoh's body once lay inside, swaddled in linen, anointed with oils, cradled in gold. Around him, amulets, scarabs, charms meant to protect him. The sarcophagus wasn't just a coffin. It was a machine of eternity, designed to keep the king intact while his soul traveled the afterlife. And this chamber, this was the destination. Every hallway, every mural, every curse led here. This was the beating heart of the tomb. You tilt the torch higher, and your eyes trace the walls. Painted scenes continue here, though dimmer. Gods stand in rows welcoming the king. The sky goddess Nut arches overhead, her body stretching across the ceiling, sprinkled with stars. It feels like the pharaoh is lying inside a cosmic cradle, rocked gently through eternity. You smile faintly. It's almost sweet in a way. A bedtime story not for you this time, but for a king who needed comfort in his forever sleep. And yet, you can't help but notice the cracks. The chamber has scars, pieces of plaster missing, chips in the paint. And the sarcophagus lid itself, you lean closer. Yes, there. A faint line, where ancient hands once pried it open. Looters. They made it here. They touched what was never meant for them. Your chest tightens. Sobering, almost sad. Centuries of planning, of genius architecture, of traps and curses, and still greed found its way. Pharaoh's treasures, once glittering, are gone. Only the stone remains. But here's the twist. Sometimes they miss things. A tiny amulet buried in dust, a scarab overlooked. The valley still whispers with such fragments. Small victories against time and thieves alike. You pause by the lid, imagining the king himself. Maybe Ramses, maybe Tutankhamun, maybe one of dozens whose names echo faintly through history. Whoever he was, he believed this chamber was impenetrable. He believed eternity waited, patient and safe. And now, here you stand, 3,000 years later, staring at his stone bed. You whisper softly, almost an apology, "I'm just passing through. Don't mind me." The silence accepts your words, or maybe just ignores them. You circle again, the torch casting long shadows across the sarcophagus. And a funny thought slips in, how much this resembles modern obsessions with security. Pharaohs were basically the first billionaires with panic rooms. Only instead of cameras and motion sensors, they had curses and stone traps. You can't help but smirk. If Wi-Fi had existed, they'd definitely have encrypted their afterlife passwords. Still, there's reverence here. You feel it pressing against your skin, reminding you that despite the humor, this place was sacred. Sacred enough that men broke their bodies carving stone. Sacred enough that artists bled color into walls. Sacred enough that curses were etched with trembling hands. All for this one moment. A pharaoh lying in his eternal chamber. You kneel briefly, resting your palm on the floor. The stone is cold, but steady. You close your eyes, and the room feels alive with echoes. The chanting of priests performing burial rites. The wailing of mourners outside. The heavy silence after the final stone was slid into place. And then darkness, centuries of it. Until now, until you open your eyes, torchlight flickering once more. The sarcophagus looms, silent, immovable. You wonder how many more chambers like this lie hidden under the cliffs, still waiting. Dozens? Hundreds? Each with a pharaoh dreaming inside. His eternity paused. The thought is comforting in a strange way. The valley isn't empty. It's crowded with sleepers, each one waiting in silence. You're walking through a city of dreams, not a wasteland. You rise, stretch your back, and glance one last time at the carvings on the lid. Anubis, Isis, Nut, all of them holding vigil. They don't blink. They don't falter. They've been standing guard longer than any soldier in history. You whisper softly, "Sleep well, Pharaoh." Then you turn, torchlight leading you back toward the passage. The burial chamber fades behind you, swallowed again by shadows. The tomb isn't finished with you yet. More secrets still wait in the dark. You follow the corridor out of the burial chamber, torch in hand, your sandals whispering against stone. The air is cooler now, tinged with something faintly sweet. Faint enough that you pause and tilt your head. At first you think it's just dust. Then you realize it's the scent of dried flowers. Strange. Flowers that should have crumbled to nothing centuries ago, still lingering in the air like a ghost perfume. You breathe in, slow and careful, and continue on. The hallway dips, turning into a smaller passage that opens into a side chamber. At first, you expect emptiness. But no, the light spills across shelves carved right into the wall, and you feel your eyes widen. Offerings. Clay jars, some cracked, some intact, sit like patient guards. Wicker baskets hardened by time. A scattering of broken figurines. Their faces chipped, but their poses still reverent. These were not treasures meant to dazzle, but gifts meant to nourish. Everyday things transformed into eternity's toolkit. You crouch before one jar, brushing off the dust. Inside, faint residue clings to the sides. Honey, maybe, or beer. Both were common offerings, because what king doesn't want a snack in the afterlife? You chuckle softly, imagining a pharaoh waking up at midnight, craving a sweet sip of beer and a bite of bread. You step deeper into the chamber. More objects reveal themselves. Reed mats folded neatly, a pillow stuffed with straw, tools carefully arranged. They thought of everything. Eternity wasn't just about gold masks and jeweled thrones. It was also about comfort, about keeping the pharaoh supplied like a divine camper setting out on a cosmic road trip. One corner holds something more striking. Small statues lined up in rows, shabty figures, each only a few inches tall, carved with tiny chisels, their arms crossed, their faces serene. You kneel, tracing their details with your torchlight. These weren't just decorations. They were workers, servants for the afterlife. Whenever Pharaoh needed a task done, he could call upon them, and they would spring to life, ready with shovels or baskets. Ancient Egypt's version of a 24/7 on-demand workforce. Uber, but with more linen. Some shabtus are chipped, their features fading. Others remain sharp, staring back at you as though aware of your presence. You smile at one particularly stubborn-looking figure, his tiny mouth curled like he's annoyed you've disturbed his nap. "Relax," you whisper. "No chores tonight." The chamber hums with silence again, but it's different from the burial chamber's silence. Here, the quiet feels warmer, like the hush of a storeroom packed with provisions. Pantry for eternity. You rise and wander toward the back wall. Painted scenes bloom faintly where torchlight brushes them. Farmers working fields, oxen plowing furrows, women baking bread, children chasing geese. It's ordinary life preserved as art. The message is clear. Pharaoh must carry all of Egypt with him, even the simple joys. You linger on one detail, a loaf of bread painted so carefully you can almost smell it. Someone, centuries ago, stood here with a reed brush, dipped it in ochre, and painted bread as though it mattered as much as the gods. And you realize it did, because what is eternity without the comfort of home? You feel a soft tug of longing in your chest, like you too could carry a loaf of bread into forever, just to feel safe. Turning, you notice a darker corner. Something glimmers faintly beneath dust. You crouch, sweeping your hand across the stone floor until the shape emerges. A small scarab, carved from a dull green stone. Its lines are worn, but the beetle's curve is unmistakable. Your heart beats faster. A forgotten charm, perhaps missed by thieves. You lift it gently, brushing it clean. The scarab was sacred, linked to the sun god Ra, symbol of rebirth. This little piece might once have rested on the pharaoh's chest, close to his heart. You roll it carefully in your palm. It's heavier than you expect, as though it's been holding a story for thousands of years. You whisper again, softer this time, "I'll leave you here, don't worry," and you set it back down exactly where it was. The chamber feels almost grateful. You straighten up, torchlight dancing across the walls once more. And suddenly it strikes you. This wasn't just an offering room. It was a love letter. Priests, artisans, family members, they left behind the best of themselves here. Not for wealth, but for devotion. Pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was a bridge between worlds. Caring for him in death was as important as caring for him in life. Your throat tightens a little at the thought. You can imagine the day these objects were placed here. Quiet hands setting down jars. Soft prayers whispered over statues. Maybe even a child slipping in a toy or bead. Something to make Pharaoh smile in the afterlife. The room holds that tenderness still. It hums in the air, invisible but undeniable. You step back slowly, letting the torchlight fall over everything one last time. The jars, the shabtus, the painted bread. And you grin quietly, because suddenly, this chamber feels less like a tomb and more like a bedroom pantry. A cozy stockpile for a traveler who was never supposed to go hungry again. You murmur, Sweet dreams, Pharaoh. Don't eat it all at once. The silence doesn't argue. And with that, you slip back into the passage, leaving the offerings behind. The tomb waits ahead, patient, endless. More chambers, more mysteries, more whispers curled into stone. The passage narrows again, your torchlight sliding across plain stone walls. The smell of dust thicker now. You think you've seen the heart of the tomb already. The burial chamber, the offerings, the scarab charm you almost pocketed but wisely left behind. But you're wrong, because ahead, the air grows colder, sharper, like the tomb is about to test you. And then you see it, a faint groove across the floor, thin but deliberate. You stop just in time, lowering the torch and kneeling down. There it is, a line cut perfectly into the stone, running from wall to wall. A trap trigger. Your skin prickles because suddenly this isn't just history, it's survival. You step back slowly, lifting the torch higher. The ceiling above looks ordinary, but you can't shake the suspicion that tons of rock once waited, balanced precariously, ready to crash down the moment someone stepped too far. A crushing end for greedy feet. You swallow. Good thing I skipped leg day. You whisper, and carefully press your back against the wall, shuffling sideways. Your sandals brush stone, your shoulder grazes dust. One cautious step, then another until the groove is behind you. Only then do you let your lungs exhale, and you realize this was never just a tomb. It was a fortress, a puzzle box designed to protect eternity. Pharaoh's architects weren't only builders, they were engineers of paranoia, men who thought in traps and dead ends, who planned not just for life after death but for burglars after burial. You move deeper, the corridor bending. Another chamber opens, this one smaller, the walls rougher. First, it looks empty. Then you notice the floor again, oddly uneven. You crouch, running your fingers across the dust. Slabs, separate, loose slabs, their edges darkened with gaps. Your heart quickens. Pit traps. Beneath those stones could be a drop into spikes or into nothingness at all. You stand slowly, gripping the torch tighter. This is the part where modern video games flash through your mind. Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, take your pick. But here, there's no reset button, no glowing markers. Just silence, dust, and the reminder that real thieves risked their lives in this quiet darkness. You step carefully along the wall, testing the stone with the edge of your sandal. Solid. Another step. Solid. A third, your heel wobbles and you yank your foot back, breath catching. You peer down. Between the cracks, the darkness yawns back at you. You can't see the bottom, and you don't really want to. You grin nervously. Nope, nope, not today. Skirting the edge, you make it past, your pulse slowing only when the ground feels safe again. And here's the thing. Some traps weren't even about killing. Some were about confusing. False passages carved to mislead. Walls sealed to look identical. Chambers built to waste time. Tomb robbers would spend hours chiseling through one wall, only to find another waiting. Like the world's cruelest escape room, the corridor ahead proves it. You reach a fork, two identical passages yawning into darkness. Which one? You stand there, torch flickering, imagining desperate robbers faced with this exact choice. Pick the wrong one, and maybe you circle endlessly, running back into the same chamber until your torch dies. You listen carefully, ears straining. Nothing, just silence. You pick the left, if only because superstition whispers that left is less obvious. And as you walk, the floor crunches faintly beneath your feet. Gravel, debris. A wall collapsed here once, maybe deliberately. Pharaoh's architects had no mercy for the curious. Still, you push through, ducking under a low arch. The torchlight dances across marks on the walls. Scratches, uneven, shallow. Not hieroglyphs, not art. Claw marks. You freeze. Then you realize they're not from animals. They're from men. Tomb robbers, trapped or lost, clawing at stone with bare hands. You lean closer, tracing the desperate gouges. The image is enough to chill your bones. And yet, a part of you admires the tomb's cruel genius. It worked, kept Pharaoh's eternity safe. Your throat feels dry. You whisper softly, "I'd have turned back too." You continue. The air feels heavier, like the tomb itself is watching you, testing your resolve. And maybe it is, because ahead, the corridor suddenly ends in another wall. Smooth, unbroken stone. But you've seen this trick before. You press your palm against it, knock gently. Hollow. The real passage lies beyond, hidden behind the wall. A false dead end. You grin, shaking your head. Clever. Imagine the effort, though. Men carving out whole chambers just to trick intruders. Hours, days, weeks of labor, all for the hope that a robber would give up, leave empty-handed, and never reach the pharaoh. Some did, but not all, because history tells you many tombs were plundered, despite the genius of these defenses, which means the game was endless. Architects built new traps, robbers learned new tricks, and on it went, a dance of greed and genius, echoing through centuries. You brush dust off your arm and glance back. The scratches on the walls seem to shimmer in the torchlight, a reminder of those who didn't win the game. And quietly, you can't help but feel grateful that your journey here is only imagined. Because if it were real, well, let's just say you wouldn't bet your life on making it this far. You smile softly, letting your shoulders relax. The tomb doesn't know you're only visiting in story. Tests you anyway, and you play along. You lift the torch, take a deep breath, and whisper into the still air, "Okay, Pharaoh, I'm still here." The silence answers with nothing, which is, somehow, more unsettling than noise. You step back, ready to find your way out of this chamber of tricks. The tomb still has more to show you, and you're not done yet. You slip out of the chamber of tricks, leaving the scratches and hollow walls behind. The corridor winds on, narrow but steady, the torchlight brushing across blank stone for a time. And then patterns begin to appear again. First, just faint lines, carvings worn thin by centuries of dust and silence. You squint, lean closer, and realize these aren't the grand scenes of gods and kings you saw earlier. They're subtler, smaller, almost secret. The wall blossoms with symbols, not decorative, not celebratory. These are warning signs like little road markers planted by the ancients. A jackal head with its mouth open, danger. A spiral line, confusion. A cluster of stars with one missing, deception. You trace your fingers along them, smiling softly. This was their ancient version of a no-entry sign, or maybe, "You are not supposed to be here." You wonder if robbers ever noticed, or if desperation made them blind. The passage veers left, opening into another chamber. This one is stranger, smaller than the others. Its walls are painted not with gods, but with illusions. You blink, step closer, torchlight sweeping across the images. It looks like a chamber within a chamber. Painted doors line the walls, each one detailed as if real. Golden knobs, carved panels, shadows painted so carefully that, in the flicker of fire, you almost reach out to open them. You laugh softly under your breath. Okay, now you're just messing with me. Pharaoh's architects weren't just engineers, they were artists of misdirection. To a looter stumbling in with a weak torch, these painted doors might look real, tempting them to waste precious time chiseling into nothing but plaster. Imagine the frustration. Days of work, only to discover flat wall beneath the illusion. You tilt your head. One door in particular seems more vivid, the paint brighter, as if refreshed by invisible hands. You step closer, fingers hovering just above the surface. Smooth, flat, no entrance, no escape, just art pretending to be stone, pretending to be passage. The chamber hums with trickery. You can almost hear the laughter of ancient painters, centuries ahead of their time, smirking at the thought of fools banging on fake doors. And then you notice something else. High on the wall, a figure painted between two doors. It's not a god this time. It's a man, a worker, perhaps, bent over with a chisel in his hand. You lean closer, torch raised. The details are rougher, less formal than divine images, almost like someone snuck in their own portrait. You smile, imagining a tired artisan leaving his mark here, immortalized not as a pharaoh, not as a priest, but as himself. A hidden signature, tucked into the tomb's labyrinth. The air feels warmer here, more human. You whisper, "Nice touch, my friend." Moving on, you step into another corridor. This one is lined with repeating symbols, circles within circles, spirals winding inward. The effect is dizzying. Torchlight makes them ripple, so that the walls seem to spin gently as you walk. You pause, steadying yourself. You realize this too was intentional. The symbols weren't just decoration. They were designed to disorient, to make the intruder's head spin, to cloud judgment, to make forward progress feel like walking in circles. You smirk, whispering, "Pharaoh invented psychological warfare." The spiral symbols carry on for what feels like forever. Each step feels heavier, slower. Your shoulders ache, your eyes blur. And then you stop, because suddenly, the wall in front of you is painted solid black. Not chipped, not broken, just a perfect, deliberate rectangle of black paint, like a hole, like an abyss. In the flicker of torchlight, it looks bottomless, like a portal waiting to swallow you. You edge closer, your heart steady but curious. You reach out. Stone. Just stone, painted in void. You laugh softly, shaking your head. You almost had me. The chamber of illusions dissolves behind you, the spirals and false doors fading back into shadows. You can almost feel the satisfaction of the ancients, each trick another layer of defense, another way to guard their sleeping king. But here's the secret you can't shake. These illusions weren't only about robbers. They were also about magic. To the priests who consecrated the tomb, these symbols, these spirals, these black doors, they weren't just tricks. They were barriers between worlds, portals the unworthy couldn't pass. You feel it in your bones as you step through, like a quiet shiver of approval. The torch crackles softly. Your sandals echo against the floor. The tomb guides you onward, deeper, past trickery and into something quieter. And you realize you're not only exploring architecture, you're walking through psychology, through belief, through the layered defenses of both stone and spirit. You whisper, almost smiling, "All right, Pharaoh, round one goes to you, but I'm still here." The silence swells, then settles, as though the tomb has accepted your persistence. And with that, you keep moving. The illusions fade behind you, swallowed again by the dust of centuries. Ahead, new secrets wait, quiet and patient, like cats in the dark. You leave the spirals and painted doors behind, your torch sputtering softly, as though even the flame is tired from all the illusions. The corridor feels calmer now, quieter, the stone walls bare again, until your eyes catch faint color ahead. You step closer. The wall blossoms into detail, and your breath stills. This isn't the playful trickery of fake doors. This is solemn, deliberate, heavy with meaning. Entire panels of painted symbols spread across the chamber, forming a language as rich as a song. You hold the torch higher. Rows of hieroglyphs march along the stone, carefully carved, then filled with pigment. The colors have faded, but not lost their voice. deep reds, faded blues, the gold shimmer still faintly clinging in grooves. And there it is, the Book of the Dead. Not a book like you know it, bound and papered, but a flowing script of spells painted directly onto stone. Verses to guide the pharaoh through the underworld, to arm him with knowledge and courage. Words were more than symbols here, they were weapons, keys, maps. You lean closer, lips moving silently as though you could sound the words. The torch flickers, casting shadows over the images woven between the text. You see Pharaoh standing before Osiris, the green-skinned god of rebirth. You see Anubis weighing a heart against the feather of Maat, goddess of truth. You see serpents coiled with open jaws, waiting in the darkness. And your chest tightens because you realize these weren't just paintings. They were instructions. Pharaoh's tomb was not only his home, it was his training ground for the afterlife. Every symbol, every spell, was a reminder of what awaited him beyond death's threshold. You imagine him, wrapped in linen, lying within his sarcophagus, while priests chanted these very lines above him. And you wonder, did he feel ready? Did he believe the words could carry him safely past demons, past chaos, into light? You let your eyes wander to a specific panel, an image of a boat gliding across a river of stars. Ra's solar bark, carrying the sun god through night. Pharaoh was promised a place aboard this boat, if he proved worthy. The thought makes you smile faintly. It's not so different from the modern idea of a ticket to heaven. Only here it's a seat on a cosmic cruise. You glance down. Along the base of the wall, a smaller image catches your eye. It shows a line of figures, each carrying tools. Farmers, fishermen, scribes, soldiers, all walking together, as though escorting Pharaoh on his journey. Tugs at your chest, because this wasn't just his journey. It was Egypt's. Every citizen had a role to play in his eternity. They carried him with them, and in return, he carried them into the afterlife. You whisper softly, "No one walks alone." The chamber seems to hum at that, a quiet acknowledgement of truth. You step deeper inside, torch sweeping across more panels. Here, a crocodile-headed demon snarls, waiting to devour souls. There, a protective spell written in looping glyphs, promising safe passage. And here, something stranger, a hidden message. The paint looks different, darker, less polished. You kneel, tracing it with your fingers. The hieroglyphs aren't part of the main design. They're tucked into a corner, small, almost shy. You can barely read them, but the gist is clear. A plea. May no robber disturb this place. May the curses hold. May his rest be eternal. You sit back slowly. It's not from Pharaoh. It's from someone else, an artisan maybe, or a priest, who slipped in his own desperate prayer. Not for himself, but for his king. Your chest warms. Even after centuries, you can feel the human behind the stone. Someone who worked by torchlight just as you do now, who whispered words into paint, hoping eternity would listen. You stand, brushing dust from your knees. And for the first time tonight, the tomb feels less like a trap, less like a fortress, and more like a cathedral. A place layered with devotion, where art and faith fused into something immortal. You tilt your head back, staring at the ceiling. Painted across it is Nut, the sky goddess again, her body arching, arms stretched wide, stars glittering on her skin. Pharaoh's final journey was not into darkness, but into her embrace. The sight is so tender, so unexpected, you feel a lump rise in your throat, because beneath all the grandeur, all the curses and traps, lies something simple. Love. Love for a king, love for eternity, love for the sky itself. You smile faintly, whispering, "You'll be all right. They made sure of it." The silence doesn't need to answer. The walls already have. You lower the torch, the shadows stretching long and soft. The words of the Book of the Dead curl around you like a lullaby, half warning, half comfort. You can almost hear the priests chanting again, their voices echoing against stone, steady as a heartbeat. And you realize, in a way, you've become part of the ritual. A witness centuries too late, but still present. Reading the words, tracing the symbols, carrying the Pharaoh's memory forward. The afterlife was meant to be eternal, and you've just given it another moment of breath. The torch flickers as though agreeing. You smile, step back, and prepare to leave this chamber of words. The journey isn't over. The tomb has more to teach you about memory, about loss, about why some chambers were never found at all. But for now, you turn, whispering one last time, "Sweet dreams, Pharaoh," and the painted walls, glowing faintly in the light, seem to nod back. The chamber of spells fades behind you, its painted stars and protective words dissolving into the darkness of memory. The corridor ahead is narrower again, colder, like a throat leading deeper into the belly of the earth. Your torch crackles faintly, its smoke curling against the ceiling, and you wonder, not for the first time, how much deeper this tomb actually goes. The floor tilts slightly downward. Each step feels heavier, slower, as though the stone itself resists your presence. Then, ahead, you spot something odd. A sudden square cut into the floor. You kneel at the edge, holding the torch low. The light dips into darkness, vertical shaft, carved straight into the bedrock. No ladder, no steps, just a gaping wound in the ground. You toss a pebble in, waiting. Seconds pass before you hear it clink faintly below. You exhale softly. Well, that's inconvenient. This wasn't built for visitors like you. It was built to confuse, to discourage. A false shaft, perhaps, meant to trick looters into wasting time or breaking bones. Some shafts led to storage chambers. Others led nowhere. Pharaoh's architects were fond of such games. But you can't shake the feeling that this one might hide more than emptiness. You lean closer, torchlight brushing its walls. Faint carvings spiral down the shaft. Not art marks of chisels. You imagine the workers lowering baskets of rubble, their ropes creaking, their backs aching. You whisper a thank you, centuries too late, to men whose names are lost but whose sweat built eternity. You stand, brushing the dust from your knees, and circle the shaft carefully. The corridor continues on the other side, as though daring you to step past. So you do. The air grows thicker, pressing against your skin. The torchlight wavers, and then you notice something else. Another shaft, this time to your left, cut into the wall like a hidden throat. Narrower, angled steeply downward. You peer inside, your flame casting shallow light. Feels alive, somehow, as though it leads somewhere real. You hesitate, then whisper, "Do I really want to crawl down there?" The silence doesn't answer, but you can almost sense the Pharaoh smirking. You kneel, pressing your hand to the opening. The stone is cool, damp. This shaft isn't decorative, it's functional. Maybe a hidden route for priests. Maybe a secret chamber, tucked away from greedy hands. Maybe your mind flickers with possibility, one of those mythical lost rooms historians still argue about. Because yes, many tombs in the valley were plundered, their secrets laid bare. But others still whisper of chambers never found, sealed so cleverly that even modern eyes can't detect them. Some believe whole families of pharaohs lie hidden, undisturbed. Some think treasures beyond imagination still sleep in the cliffs. You lean deeper, torchlight struggling to fill the shaft. The angle is too sharp to climb safely, at least in this dreamy midnight journey of yours. But you don't need to go all the way down. Just peering inside is enough to feel the hum of secrecy. You whisper, "I get it, Pharaoh. Some doors aren't meant to open. Standing again, you brush dust from your palms and continue along the main corridor. The shafts fade behind you, but their presence lingers in your thoughts. The tomb isn't just horizontal, it's vertical, layered like an onion. Passages above, passages below, some leading to treasure, others to nothing. A labyrinth in 3 dimensions woven into stone. It strikes you how modern we think we are with our skyscrapers and subways. Yet here, 3,000 years ago, men dug whole cities beneath the earth for one person's eternity. You smirk softly. Pharaoh basically invented basement apartments. The corridor widens suddenly, the ceiling arching higher. Torchlight reveals rougher stone, less polished. This wasn't built for ceremony. This was utility space, hidden veins in the body of the tomb. And there, faint scratches again. But these aren't desperate like the ones you saw earlier. These are marks of measurement. Grid lines, etched carefully by surveyors who planned every angle, every depth. You press your fingers to one line, feeling the shallow groove. The architects left fingerprints in stone, not literal but unmistakable. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining the scene. Men bent over plumb lines and ropes, muttering calculations by torchlight. Someone shouting directions, someone else chiseling guidelines. The tomb wasn't born of magic. It was math and sweat and bruised hands. And somehow that makes it more magical. You open your eyes again, following the scratches until they vanish into smooth wall. And then you notice a faint seam, a line so thin you almost miss it. You press against it lightly, solid, but different. A hidden chamber? Or just another false promise? You smile quietly, stepping back. The valley is full of such mysteries. Doors within doors, rooms within rooms, most sealed forever. Some archaeologists believe untouched chambers still sleep behind blank walls, waiting for the right eye, the right technology, the right patience to find them. You whisper, maybe you'll stay hidden forever, and maybe that's okay, because there's something beautiful in not knowing, in the idea that the valley still holds secrets even now, that not everything has been stripped bare. You step back from the seam, letting the mystery remain intact. The shaft, the hidden door, the scratches of men long gone, they all weave together into a reminder. The tomb is a living puzzle, and not every piece is meant to be solved. Your torch crackles. The air shifts, a faint sigh of stone settling. You take another step forward, deeper still, knowing the tomb hasn't finished with you. And quietly, beneath your breath, you murmur, "Lead on, Pharaoh. I'm still following." The silence accepts your words, and the darkness deepens, ready to reveal its next secret. You walk on, torchlight brushing over stone. When the air begins to shift again, it feels warmer, heavier, as though the corridor itself has absorbed whispers over centuries and now exhales them slowly into your skin. You pause, holding your breath, because you recognize the sensation. This is not just a passage. This is a stage. The ground flattens, the ceiling rises, and the chamber ahead opens wide. You step into it carefully, your flame trembling as though nervous, like you are about to interrupt something sacred. The walls are smoother here, almost polished, their surface reflecting hints of your light. You take another step, and the echo answers you, clear, sharp, as though this chamber was built to amplify sound. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and imagine priests in white linen robes, carrying incense that coils like ghosts. The beat of drums, deep and slow, echoing off the stone. Chants rising, weaving, cascading into the darkness. Because yes, this is where they would have performed the rituals. You can almost hear it now, the opening of the mouth ceremony. A ritual so vital, so dramatic, it was believed to awaken the very senses of the dead pharaoh. priests would touch sacred tools to his lips, his eyes, his ears, his nose, restoring the ability to breathe, to eat, to see, to speak in the afterlife. The thought makes you shiver, not because it's eerie, but because it's tender. Imagine believing your king needed his mouth open to taste eternity. Imagine standing in the torchlit dark, chanting spells to make sure he never lost his voice, never lost the chance to call on the gods. You smile faintly, basically the world's first mic check. Your joke bounces off the walls, softer than a whisper, swallowed by the weight of history. But you don't mind. You lift your torch higher, scanning the chamber. Along one wall, you see faint stains, dark patches where incense smoke once gathered. Along another, shallow grooves cut into the stone. Perhaps benches once stood there or platforms for priests. You crouch, brushing your fingers over the floor, and imagine bare feet shuffling in the dust. The clink of ritual tools, the murmur of prayers. And then, faintly, you notice something else. A carving half hidden in shadow, low to the ground. You kneel, tracing it carefully. Not hieroglyphs this time, but a simple outline. A jackal, slender, alert. Anubis, of course. The god of embalming, guardian of tombs, keeper of secrets. His presence carved here was not decorative, it was protective. Anubis was everywhere the body traveled, ensuring no harm came to Pharaoh in this world or the next. You whisper softly, "Still watching, aren't you?" The jackal stares back, its stone eyes unblinking. You stand again, taking slow steps to the center of the chamber. You tilt your head back, torchlight licking at the ceiling. Here, the walls are bare, but the ceiling, yes, the ceiling still holds faint traces of paint. Swirls of stars, faint lines suggesting a sky above. You imagine priests lifting their arms toward it, chanting as though summoning the heavens themselves into this underground cathedral. They didn't just bury Pharaoh here, they recreated the cosmos around him, folding eternity into stone. The sound of your breath fills the silence. You let it out slowly, realizing how carefully this chamber was designed. Acoustics, symbolism, architecture. Everything here was more than ritual, it was theater. Pharaoh's journey into the afterlife wasn't quiet or lonely. It was staged, dramatic, communal. His people gathered in darkness to hand him to the gods. And you, standing here centuries later, are part of that echo. You close your eyes again, letting yourself drift. The drums thud in your mind. The incense burns. The priests chant. The air thickens, but instead of choking, it comforts. Feels like being wrapped in a blanket of sound. And for a brief, fleeting moment, you are no longer a visitor. You are a participant. When you open your eyes again, the chamber is still empty. Dust, silence. Your single flame, but the ritual lingers in your bones. You smile softly, whispering, "Thank you for letting me watch." The silence seems to nod in return. You lower the torch, stepping toward the far corridor. The chamber falls behind you, shrinking into shadow, but its echo clings to your ears, like a lullaby too powerful to forget. And as you walk deeper still, you wonder, were these rituals enough? Did Pharaoh awaken as promised? Did he walk with Osiris, speak to Ra, join the eternal procession of stars? Historians still argue. Some call the ceremonies symbolic, others insist they were believed as literal truth. You shrug softly. Maybe both. Maybe truth wears many faces, and faith is just one of them. Your torch flares, guiding you onward. The air cools again, stone pressing close. Another passage, another descent. And quietly, with a faint smile tugging your lips, you whisper, "All right, Pharaoh, what's next in the program?" The corridor curves, inviting you deeper, and the tomb answers with silence, sweet, heavy, and eternal. The ritual chamber lingers behind you, a soft echo of chants that never quite fade. But as you step deeper, the mood shifts. The air cools again, sharper, as though the stone itself remembers something less reverent. Your torch picks out faint scratches along the wall. At first, you assume they're more survey lines, marks left by builders. But no, these are cruder, uneven, frantic. You trace one with your fingertip, and a chill runs through you. These were cut after the fact. Looters. You swallow softly. The Valley of the Kings wasn't only a resting place. It was also the ultimate target. Pharaohs filled their tombs with treasures meant to last for eternity. Gold, jewels, precious oils, fine linens. And humans, being human, couldn't resist. You kneel, brushing dust from the floor. Shards of pottery lie here, broken, forgotten. Maybe they once held food offerings. Maybe they were smashed during a hurried raid. Either way, their silence tells you the truth. Someone was here who wasn't supposed to be. You stand, torch flickering against the walls. A faint hole yawns in one corner, its edges jagged. Someone forced their way in. You step closer, crouch, and peer inside. The tunnel is crude, smaller than the official corridors. Just wide enough for desperate men to crawl through. You sigh. So much for resting in peace. Strange, though. For all the traps and curses, for all the complexity of these tombs, so many were still robbed. Some within years of being sealed. Pharaoh's eternal dream often lasted only as long as it took for rumors of treasure to spread. And yet, some remained untouched. Or at least untouched until modern times. You smile faintly, remembering how chance led to discoveries like Tutankhamun's tomb, hidden beneath debris and other construction. Some tombs evaded robbers not through traps or curses, but through simple luck, buried deeper, covered by rockfall, forgotten in the endless maze of the valley. You step back from the looter's tunnel, brushing stone dust from your hands. And you realize there's something almost poetic about it. The pharaohs built illusions, mazes, false shafts, but what truly saved some tombs was randomness. A twist of fate, a hiding place no one thought to look. Your torch flickers again, its smoke curling like a ghost. You move onward, the corridor bending slightly. The walls narrow, pressing close, as though squeezing you deeper into the earth. And then you stumble on another sign of intrusion, a pile of discarded wood. Not construction beams, but splintered fragments, perhaps from a smashed coffin, left behind when thieves took what they wanted. You kneel, running your hand across the grain. Even ruined, the wood still carries a faint sweetness, cedar imported from far-off lands. You whisper, "They stole the gold, but they left the heart." Because in the end, treasure wasn't just jewels and metal. It was craftsmanship. It was memory. It was the human touch poured into every detail. You rise, stepping carefully over the wood. And in the quiet, you imagine the scene. Torches held by trembling hands. Hushed voices, hurried footsteps. The sharp clang of metal on stone as thieves pried open doors. The rush of greed, the fear of gods watching. And then the silence after. Because whether they succeeded or not, whether they lived long or fell to curses or punishment, all that remains is dust. Their names, their stories gone. Only these scars on the walls remain, a warning and a whisper. You shake your head gently, smiling with that wry humor that keeps you steady. Even in death, you can't escape human nosiness. The corridor slopes downward again. Your torch sways, shadows stretching like long fingers. But then, something catches your eye. Not destruction this time, but preservation. A sealed doorway, its plaster still intact. You lean closer, heart quickening. The plaster bears faint impressions, hieroglyphic stamps pressed into the surface like seals. Royal seals. You reach out but stop your hand just short of touching. The surface is delicate, fragile, and yet it has survived centuries, untouched by robbers. You exhale slowly, a smile curling your lips. Not all of them got in. The strange, the comfort that gives you. For every looted chamber, every shattered coffin, there were still some doors strong enough or lucky enough to hold. The valley wasn't just a story of loss. It was also a story of survival. You linger there, torchlight brushing the plaster, wondering what lies behind it. More spells? More paintings? A chamber still sleeping in silence? Historians still argue about how many tombs remain undiscovered. Some say dozens. Some say only a few. The cliffs of Thebes are riddled with possibility, their secrets buried beneath rubble and time. You step back slowly, leaving the seal unbroken. It's not your place to open it. Not tonight. Instead, you carry the thought with you as you move deeper. That mystery still breathes in the valley. That Pharaoh's dream isn't entirely lost. That somewhere in the earth, untouched chambers still sleep, waiting for eternity. Your torchlight stretches forward, trembling on stone. And in the hush, you whisper, "Some secrets are better off dreaming." The corridor narrows again, drawing you further into the embrace of darkness. And the silence welcomes you, heavy but kind. The sealed doorway lingers in your mind as you drift deeper, but the air seems to soften, as though the tomb itself wants to remind you of something gentler. Pharaoh wasn't alone in building this eternity. Hundreds of hands shaped the stone around you. Hands now dust, but once blistered and calloused, carrying chisels, torches, ropes, and dreams. Your torch hums faintly as you picture them. Stonecutters, painters, carpenters, each playing their part. Pharaoh may be remembered as divine, but his eternity was carved by human sweat. You pause, leaning against the cool wall, and let your thoughts slip above ground for a moment, to the village of Deir el-Medina. Nestled in the hills near the Valley of the Kings, it was home to the artisans who crafted these tombs. Families lived there, children grew, lovers argued and made up, meals were shared. Life thrummed in clay houses while death's chambers were carved nearby. It feels strangely comforting. These weren't nameless slaves whipped into service, as old myths suggest. They were skilled workers, respected and paid in rations of grain, beer, and fish. Pharaoh trusted them with secrets no one else could know. Imagine going to work every morning knowing you're building the pathway to a god's eternity. Not many job descriptions match that. You smile faintly. Benefits included free sand in your shoes and a chance at immortality. The joke fades into silence, but the warmth lingers. You crouch to study the stone at your feet. The marks here aren't decorative. They're functional. Chisel grooves still crisp, as if the worker only just put his tool down. You can almost see him. Sweat dripping, torchlight flickering across his face, steady hands cutting with precision born of repetition. And you remember the workers weren't just builders. They were storytellers. The painters who filled the walls with hieroglyphs, the carvers who etched gods into stone, the craftsmen who shaped coffins. All of them wove narrative into eternity. Without them, Pharaoh would have slept in silence. Your torchlight brushes another wall. Faint graffiti scratches its surface, not part of the official design. You lean closer. It's crude, a few rough lines, but you recognize shapes. A man holding a staff, another playing a lute. A worker's doodle, left behind in a stolen moment of boredom. You grin. So even in the afterlife's construction site, someone was sketching memes. The humor feels good, light against the heavy dark. And it reminds you that the valley wasn't just solemn, it was human. Workers laughed, complained, shared gossip. Some even recorded their lives in ostraca, shards of pottery where they scribbled notes, shopping lists, love poems. You picture one now, a scribe bent over a potsherd, writing that so-and-so was sick or that someone skipped work. Pharaoh's tomb was eternal, but life above ground was delightfully ordinary. And yet they were bound by secrecy. The location of tombs, the treasures inside, the rituals performed, all of it was guarded. To betray those secrets was treason. The workers lived with the weight of knowledge heavier than any stone block. You whisper softly, "Imagine keeping the world's biggest spoiler forever." Still, their loyalty wasn't unbroken. During hard times, even workers joined in robberies, slipping back into tombs they'd helped carve, seeking wealth when rations ran thin. Human frailty and divine duty collided in ways the pharaohs never imagined. You walk slowly, torch crackling. The air tastes faintly of dust, but you think of the sweetness of bread, the tang of beer, the simple joys those workers clung to after days underground. You realize Pharaoh's eternity wasn't just his own. It was tied to theirs. The tomb is silent now, but listen closely enough and you can almost hear it. The laughter of children in the village, the clang of tools on stone, the sighs of tired men under desert stars. You step deeper, whispering, "You built him forever." And in doing so, you built yourselves into it too. The silence agrees. Your torchlight brushes against a wider stretch of wall, smooth as if waiting for something. You imagine painters here, crouched with palettes of ochre and lapis, dipping brushes into egg yolk and gum, layering color stroke by stroke. Each figure, each line, a prayer for eternity. Some of those men believed in the gods with all their hearts. Some, perhaps, just painted because it was their job. And yet, the work endures. Millennia later, you're still here, watching, remembering. Their names may be lost, but their touch lives on in every symbol. You close your eyes for a moment, letting that thought settle. Eternity didn't just belong to Pharaoh. It stretched outward, weaving everyone who touched it into its threads. Builders, painters, thieves, priests, you, all part of the same long dream. When you open your eyes again, the corridor slopes once more. The darkness ahead beckons, patient, eternal. You adjust your torch, take a steadying breath, and move forward. And softly, almost playfully, you whisper, "All right, artisans, show me what else you left behind." The silence doesn't answer, but you can almost feel a smile in the stone. The passage deepens. The tomb draws you further. The story continues. The artisan's laughter fades into the stone, but the air ahead shifts again. It feels lighter, sweeter, almost touched by sunlight. Even though you're buried deep underground, you tilt your head, curious, because this part of the tomb doesn't feel abandoned. Feels visited. You take a few more steps and then it clicks. Offerings. Even after burial, Pharaoh wasn't forgotten. Families, priests, and whole communities returned to the valley in festival processions, carrying baskets of bread, jars of beer, bouquets of lotus flowers. They walked the same paths you do now, their footsteps echoing with devotion. You pause, kneeling near the wall, brushing your hand across faint marks on the floor. Indentations, shallow, almost invisible. But if you tilt the torch just right, they catch the light. The scuffs of jars set down, lifted again. The footprints of ritual. You smile faintly. Dinner deliveries for eternity. The thought makes you warmer than you expected. Because here, in this dark corridor, you realize Pharaoh wasn't just buried and abandoned. He was visited, remembered, loved. You picture the beautiful festival of the valley, an annual procession where boats carried statues of gods from Karnak across the river to the West Bank, where the dead rested. People crowded the streets, families gathered at tombs, laughter mingled with prayer. Offerings weren't just obligation, they were reunion. You lean back against the wall, imagining it. The hush of the Nile at night, lanterns bobbing like fireflies on the water, music carried on the breeze, flutes, drums, voices. A community crossing into the land of the dead, not in fear, but in joy. It strikes you how human it is, this need to visit the gone. You do it too, with graves, with anniversaries, with quiet moments when you whisper to someone no longer there. Thousands of years later, the instinct hasn't changed. Your torch hums softly as you step deeper. The corridor widens again into a chamber. This one isn't grand like the ritual hall, nor sacred like the spell room. Feels more humble, place for offerings. You scan the floor and smile. Tiny fragments glitter faintly in the light. Pottery shards, faint traces of pigment. Once these might have held honey, figs, beer, or milk. All of it food for the soul, fuel for the eternal journey. You crouch, brushing dust from a shard. The curve suggests a jar, painted once with blue lines. You hold it gently, whispering, "Still serving you after all this time." The silence answers with a faint warmth, or maybe it's just the torch reflecting in the shard. Either way, you feel the connection. And then, something more curious catches your eye. A patch of the wall painted differently, rougher, quicker. You step closer, tilting the torch. Graffiti again, but this time not a worker's doodle. No, these are prayers. Names scratched by visitors. Little messages to Pharaoh, or maybe to their own loved ones. Pleas for protection, for guidance. Some crude, some careful, but all alive. You smile softly. So even back then, people left comments. Feels almost funny, almost touching. Eternity wasn't a lonely silence. It was a conversation. You straighten, letting your torch sweep the chamber. And you wonder, what did Pharaoh think of it? Did he stir faintly in his sarcophagus each time someone whispered a prayer outside? Did he feel the tug of love, the hum of devotion, like a soft blanket over his eternal sleep? Historians still argue about the meaning of these festivals. Were they purely religious, or also social? An excuse for families to gather, to picnic among the tombs? Maybe both. Maybe eternity and family and food have always been inseparable. Your smile lingers as you move on, the chamber falling behind you. The air cools again, but it carries a faint sweetness, as though a trace of lotus still blooms in the dust. And you realize something important. Pharaoh wasn't only carried into the afterlife by priests and spells. He was carried by people who remembered him, by footsteps echoing in these halls, by jars of bread and beer, by laughter and prayers. You pause, turning slowly in the corridor, whispering to the silence, "They didn't forget you. Not then. Not now." The torch crackles gently like a nod, and you continue deeper, the echoes of festivals clinging to your skin like perfume. The corridor narrows again, as if the tomb wants to make sure you feel the weight of the moment. You slow your steps without even realizing it. Something in the air shifts, heavier, denser, like breathing through velvet. The offering chamber fades behind you, and ahead, the stone seems to draw tighter. The torchlight spills forward reluctantly, showing walls smoother than before. The workers must have taken extra care here, polishing each surface, as though the very rock understood it was leading somewhere sacred. You let your fingers brush along the stone, cold, silken, almost like touching the skin of time itself. And then you notice, faint traces of paint still cling to the walls. Not vivid, not like the ritual chamber, but subtle, deep reds, muted golds, ghostly blues. Symbols that once danced brightly now hover like whispers. They form a path guiding you forward. Your heart ticks faster, because you know what lies ahead. The burial chamber, You breathe out softly, murmuring, "Well, no pressure." The thought makes you grin in the silence. Because the truth is, the idea of stepping into a pharaoh's burial room is both thrilling and absurd. It's like strolling into a celebrity's private bedroom thousands of years later. No permission slip, no RSVP. Just you, a torch, and eternity waiting. You take a few more steps, and the floor dips gently. The threshold. Your torch flickers, the flame leaning toward the chamber ahead. Like it, too, is eager. You cross. The chamber swallows you whole. It is vast, wider than anything you've passed so far. The ceiling stretches up into darkness, beyond where your light can reach. The walls glow faintly, lined with more hieroglyphs, more stories. Here, every inch is covered. Pharaoh's journey etched in stone, his triumphs painted in color, his soul's voyage guarded by gods with animal heads and piercing eyes. And in the center, there it is, the sarcophagus, massive, carved from red granite, its surface gleaming faintly in the torchlight. The lid is etched with images of deities spreading their wings, wrapping Pharaoh in eternal embrace. The size of it stuns you. You thought you were ready, but no, you weren't. You step closer, each footfall echoing like thunder in the chamber. The torch trembles in your grip, though whether from your hand or the breath of history, you're not sure. You circle the sarcophagus slowly, tracing the carved lines, the hieroglyphs spiraling like prayers around its edges. Your whisper catches in the air. "So this is where you sleep." The silence hums in answer. For a moment you swear you hear something, a faint sigh, like fabric shifting. But when you tilt your head, it's gone. Probably your imagination. Probably. You crouch, brushing the base with your fingertips. Cool. Smooth. And yet, here and there, tiny chips, faint scratches. Not everything about eternity is perfect. You think about the day this chamber was sealed. Priests chanting, incense curling through the air. Workers sliding the massive stone into place. Sweat dripping, muscles straining. Then silence, as the last torch was extinguished and darkness claimed the room. No one alive was meant to enter again. Not ever. And yet here you are. You straighten slowly, letting your eyes wander across the chamber. Offerings once filled this room, stacked around the sarcophagus, golden shrines, chests of jewels, carved figurines, jars of oil and perfume. Most are gone now, either lost to time or plunder. But faint impressions remain on the floor, like shadows of treasures long vanished. You pause at one corner where a dark stain marks the stone. Burned resin, maybe, a remnant of the funeral rite. You lean closer, inhaling softly, and oddly enough, you think you catch it. A trace of sweetness, faint, like old myrrh. You chuckle gently, either incense or someone forgot their candle. But the humor fades into quiet reverence again, because you realize this chamber isn't just stone and echoes. It's a heart, the heart of the tomb. And like any heart, it still beats in its own silent rhythm. Historians still debate what happened in some of these burial rooms. Were they sealed forever without disturbance? Or were they quietly revisited by priests to renew rituals, to whisper prayers, to keep Pharaoh alive in memory? The evidence is faint, scattered, disputed. But standing here, you feel certain. This place wasn't abandoned. It was too alive, too charged. Someone always remembered. You step back toward the center, gazing once more at the sarcophagus. And you imagine the pharaoh within, wrapped in linen, face hidden behind golden mask, body adorned with amulets and jewels, resting, waiting, not asleep, not exactly, something between sleep and journey. You whisper softly, "Sweet dreams," and in the silence, you swear the granite warms slightly under your gaze, like the stone itself appreciates the gesture. You lower yourself to the floor, leaning against the wall, torch set carefully beside you. The chamber glows dimly, shadows flickering across painted gods. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the place. For a moment, you close your eyes, and you imagine lying in that sarcophagus, not in fear but in calm, surrounded by stone, by symbols, by the quiet hum of eternity. You open your eyes again, smiling faintly. Nope, still not signing up for that. The thought echoes lightly, a final joke to balance the weight of it all. And then you rise, torch lifted once more. Because though this feels like the end, you know there's more. Always more. The tombs never stop surprising you. The burial chamber holds Pharaoh, but the valley itself still whispers, and you're not done listening yet. You linger in the burial chamber, the air thick with stillness, but something tugs at you. A reminder that Pharaoh is not alone. The valley outside is vast, carved with dozens of tombs, each a story folded into stone. This chamber is one voice in a choir of silence, and if you listen closely, you can almost hear the others humming through the rock. You tilt your head, letting the torchlight drift along the walls one last time, then step back toward the passage. Your feet echo softly, like a drumbeat guiding you away. The sarcophagus fades into shadow behind you, but the sense of presence lingers, woven into your skin like fine linen. The corridor carries you upward, the air cooling as you move, and with each step, you think of the countless other tombs scattered through this valley. Some open, mapped, studied, others hidden still, their entrances swallowed by sand and stone. Secrets waiting patiently, like unopened letters. You breathe in slowly. They're still out there, aren't they? And the silence answers with a low hum, as if the whole mountain shifts slightly in agreement. You picture the valley as it was thousands of years ago, alive with workers chiseling, priests chanting, families carrying offerings. Now the surface lies quiet, baked under the sun, tourists wandering paths marked by guide ropes. Yet beneath, whole chambers still sleep untouched. Archaeologists today debate how many remain hidden. Some say only a handful. Others whisper dozens, maybe even hundreds, collapsed into secrecy by time. And who knows what treasures or what simple human traces they hold. You imagine stumbling across one yourself. A misplaced step, the crunch of stone giving way, a hollow sound beneath, sand shifting, an opening revealed. You chuckle softly. Yeah, I'd probably just fall straight through the floor. Still, the thought stirs something tender in you. Because the truth is, not every tomb is about gold or grandeur. Many belong to nobles, artisans, priests, people who lived, loved, and dreamed, now resting in their own silent corners of the valley. And maybe that's the greater mystery. Not the treasure, not the curses, but the reminder that thousands of lives once converged here, each with its own story. You pause at a bend in the passage, tilting your torch to the wall. Faint cracks trace downward, spidering across the surface. You press your palm against the stone and feel a hollow thrum, faint but real. Somewhere beyond this wall, another chamber waits. Maybe collapsed, maybe empty, maybe holding something that hasn't seen light in over 3,000 years. You grin softly. No pressure, huh? The torch sputters as if in laughter. You continue, climbing higher until the corridor opens into a final chamber. Not as vast as the burial room, but strangely open, unfinished. The ceiling rough, walls only partly smoothed. Perhaps the workers never completed it. Perhaps they intended another passage, another chamber, but stopped short. You step into the center, listening. The silence here feels different, more restless, as if the stone itself wants to speak. You close your eyes, letting yourself imagine it. The other tombs scattered all around. Some discovered, some still waiting. Layers of lives hidden in stone, like dreams folded into bedclothes. And you realize something: you will never know them all. No one will. The valley keeps its secrets the way the night keeps its stars, revealing some, hiding others, always holding more than you can count. You whisper to the dark, and maybe that's the point. The torchlight flickers in gentle agreement. You sink slowly to the ground, leaning back against the wall. The cool stone presses into your spine, steady, grounding. Above, the ceiling hovers unfinished, like an open question. And here, at the edge of Pharaoh's eternal home, you feel the weight of mystery settle into something softer, something soothing, because not knowing everything isn't failure. It's comfort, a reminder that the world still has secrets, still has wonder, still has lullabies whispered by stone. Your breathing slows, sinking with the silence. Your eyes half close, torch swaying gently at your side. And you think about the valley one last time. Sun rising over the cliffs, shadows spilling into the ravines. Tombs hidden beneath, some found, some not. A landscape that is both map and mystery. You let the image blur, soften, dissolve like sand drifting in water. And as your thoughts settle, you murmur into the dark. They're still waiting, and that's okay. The chamber holds the words, gentle, like hands cupping a candle. And slowly, softly, you let the valley fade into dream.